Hi there, Linda Berens again. I'm looking forward to exploring with you today another one of the 16 personality type patterns. And this time we're going to take a look at the Conceptualizer Director, which is the name we give to the theme for the INTJ pattern. So I hope you find this interesting and enlightening as we look at the various ways we can look at this whole type to better understand it. So as we look at each of the 16 personality types, I hope we can remember that these are whole type themes and that they're patterns. And in living systems, it always helps to understand the pattern as something distinct from the processes that help maintain that pattern. So we like to start with recognizing for each of the 16 personality types that there are holistic type patterns. There is a holistic type pattern and that patterns rule the processes. So with these videos, we're focusing primarily on the various patterns that can inform us about various aspects of the types that we're looking at today. So the first thing we will do is take a look at a sub pattern, if you will, of essential motivators. I like to start there because it gives us our deepest motivations for doing what we do and why we do what we do. And this is our variation on David Kersey's work with the four temperaments. We had some different names, and we really realized that this particular lens gets at the deep why of our behavior. So it's what motivates us the most. That we'll take a look at those patterns, and then we'll take a look at the interaction styles. And that tells us a kind of how we do what we do. It's more about our energy patterns and how we interact with others, what kinds of it even shows up in movement, these interaction style patterns. So we'll take a look at that. And then we will take a look at the intentional drivers, which is a new lens that, as you see, the little X on the book still isn't written up yet, but we'll be having a course on that soon. And hopefully get the book out. I don't promise anything about deadlines, but anyway, this gives us something about our deepest intentions, sort of what we're intending. So how, why, what? And then we will do some more look at unpacking the type code that relates to the 16 personality type patterns. So we're looking at then, today, we'll be looking at the Conceptualizer Director, or INTJ, as people often think about it. So let's get started looking at the theme of Conceptualizer Director. One of the things is that these phrases are some things that I developed with Dario Nardi. They're just holistic themes, and sometimes people can get a sense of which type fits them by reading these themes. And they seem to work better when they're all in a paragraph rather than separate bullet points, because it's not quite traits. So let's go over that. So Conceptualizer Director is really all about maximizing achievements. And they seem to have a drive for self-mastery. They want to master themselves, of course, and build a vision. And sometimes it's very long-range strategizing. So very often they get this vision of what's going to be just ahead of the trend, I've noticed. This vision is really all about conceptualizing and then directing actions to make those come to true. So very long-range strategizing, realizing progress toward goals. So they want to realize, meaning that they want to see progress and toward those goals, and to realize about that. So realize meaning making real. And they tend to be quite adept at systems thinking. They tend to think about the whole system and the various parts and how they're working together. They seem to have a talent for seeing the reasons behind things, why something is the way it is. In a way, a bit of a detective in that regard. And I think they want to be on the leading edge, and in my experience, they are often on the leading edge of whatever's going on. And important to someone with a conceptualizer director pattern is to maintain their independence. They it doesn't mean they won't collaborate, be collaborative or cooperate. It's that there's a piece of independence that they want to maintain, and they find it difficult to let go in interacting with others sometimes. So it's just really that focus on where they're going and what goals they're working on. So that's the overall theme. So let's take a look at the sub lens, and another theme, a sub-theme, which is from the essential motivator lens. And so the conceptualizer director, like several others, other people with of the 16 types, has a theorist pattern. And so their core psychological needs, which is a key essential part of the essential motivators, it's what we deeply need to be psychologically alive. And so for the conceptualizer director, these core needs are mastery and self-control, and knowledge and competence. There are other types with NT in their pattern that share this theorist pattern, but in the conceptualizer directory, there's really, really a focus on the mastery and self-control. Along with knowledge and competence. And their core values are to see progress and improvement, especially for conceptualizer director. They've conceptualized something, they are directing actions to get there, and they do want to see progress and improvement. They like logical consistency, not as much as they like progress and improvement, I would think. They have they're interested in the ultimate truth and theories. So liking theories, as long as they are not just pie in the sky, so that they are ultimate truth. They're driven to get at those things. They highly value expertise and having expert relationships. So this is part of what those with the theorist pattern, and especially the INTJ or conceptualizer director pattern, has. The talents are strategy, as we already talked about a little bit with this particular theme. Differential thinking, to see things slightly differently from, this is different from that, so we shouldn't be confusing them, confounding them. And they do their fair amount of theorizing. Coming up with theories or coming up with new explanations, or seeing how there's already a well-developed model, but are there some variations that we need to take into account, and looking for things like that. Some of their behaviors are an infinite time orientation. In other words, the past, the present, the future, it's all kind of factored in. And they tend to critique, often misunderstood as criticism, but they do tend to critique something in the interest of mastering it or improving it. This progress and improvement value relates to that critiquing. And they tend to like precise language, to be specific in the way that they're talking, and also have a skeptical attitude. So to think skeptically means, this attitude is to not take things on faith, but to have a sense of there's data to support it, and that's especially true for this pattern, or that it's somehow proven, and they have a composed demeanor, not so much. So it's kind of a sense of quiet composedness, if you will, for the conceptualizer director. The second lens that will shed light on this pattern is what we call chart the course. This is the interaction style lens. And the core drives for chart the course are this pressing need to anticipate. So if this is your pattern, it's probably stressful if you can't get a sense of what's going to happen. And often you may know what's going to happen, and then, but there is this drive to anticipate. So it's very important to have that insight come to you or to be told what's going to happen. The core belief is it's worth the effort to think ahead to reach the goal. And so sometimes just thinking isn't seen as effort, but it is effort. And for the conceptualizer director, they especially like to think ahead to reach the goal. And that all aim is to get that desired result, the result that's been envisioned, or and sometimes that desired result has to be envisioned as well ahead of time. So, but once they have it, their really aim is to get there. And the talents that go with Chart the Course are conceptualizing an end result and then giving guidance to help people get there. Now, the interaction styles, there are 4 variations of each interaction style. So in this particular variation, this really, all of this conceptualizing and theorizing really fits the theorist version of that. Talents, the behaviors, they tend to be somewhat intense and somewhat reserved. They may not show a lot of what they're thinking or feeling. And in their communications, they tend to be direct. So that's the Chart the Course aspect of the conceptualizer director. So now let's take a look at the intentional driver's lens. And this particular pattern comes up under orchestrating. So if you think about an orchestra conductor who is getting a whole lot of moving pieces into going in the same direction. So that's what the orchestrating is. And the quest is to orchestrate, to maximize the resources and find out what's workable. So going ahead, trying it, finding out if it works. If it doesn't, we won't do it. And to get all of these moving parts going in the same direction. And what they want is a produced outcome. So it's important to get an outcome for the 4 patterns that have the orchestrating pattern theme. So action and a results rationale. So they want, the rationale is how they want it explained in terms, things explained in terms of the action and the results. And that's the rationale they provide as well. So produced outcomes, quest to orchestrate to get all of these moving parts going in the same direction. So let's take a look from the cognitive dynamics lens. We've looked at the whole pattern of the conceptualizer director. Now we can take a look at the pattern of the various processes that help maintain the broader pattern of conceptualizer director. So for this, we call it cognitive dynamics. This is based on the work of Carl Jung, of course, and then John Beebe's view of how each of these 8 cognitive processes, we call them, or 8 Jungian functions, play out in this particular pattern. So for conceptualizer director, they have a leading role, meaning this is what the process they tend to lead with, of foreseeing. So what comes first is the vision of where things are going to go. This introverted intuiting, foreseeing. And that's what they tend to lead with, and that tends to drive the rest of the way the processes are used. It's supported with segmenting or extroverted thinking. So imagine that if it's just the theme of conceptualizer director, you conceptualize it, you foresee it, and then you segment. In other words, you break things up into the movable parts and get things accomplished in that way. So you segment and organize and structure. Putting structure on the external world is kind of how I see extroverted thinking. So that's a supporting role that helps make the vision happen. The relief role is valuing, and this also plays a role. For one thing, it's what John Beebe called the puer puella, or the child. It's where we like to play. The role it plays in this INTJ pattern is of introverted feeling. So that's what's important. We call it valuing. So you have this vision, you break things apart. As new information comes up, you check it against what's important in terms of getting to the goal that you're trying to get to. So it can be, the valuing can be about what's important to you, what's important to the project. It could be the worth of something. But you can see how these processes work together in the Conceptualizer Director pattern. Now, at the base of the spine of the personality, so basically the head in this model is what, kind of we think about the brain as what's going on, but it's the head giving orders and the arms making things happen. And the aspirational wall at the bottom is what makes your feet go. And so it's something that they aspire to do. And so if we take a look at the Conceptualizer Director, they have this aspiration to being able to experience what's going on in the moment. And sometimes later in life, you will see a fair amount of this extroverted sensing behavior that you would not have seen as earlier on in life. But it's something that they aspire to. So they want to see their visions playing out in the real world and to really tune into that concrete reality of the real world, she says in quotes. The shadow processes for the Conceptualizer Director. These are there, they're there for use, but they are in the shadows. So sometimes they pop out and, can surprise you, and sometimes not used in an effective way. So the process that plays an opposing role or a support role is extroverted intuiting or interpreting. And extroverted intuiting can be used with introverted intuiting and function as sort of as one. So this is in a supporting role, seeing the possibilities, the possible options for action, and interpreting things can feed and work with that vision of the future that comes for Conceptualizer Director. So it can be supportive in that way. It can be oppositional too, because what may come up is a possibility that wants to block what the vision was. And they could get stubborn with that sometimes. So two sides of the coin here. The process that plays a critical parent role in the Conceptualizer Director pattern is analyzing. So they remember the critical parent role is the part of the parent that wants to improve things by being critical. And so sometimes in the Conceptualizer Director pattern, analyzing or introverted thinking might come up with some things that they become more skeptical about, or something that is critical that says, oh no, this won't work, so you're not doing this right, or something like that, comparing it to what the models are, what the principles are, just doing that analyzing. And then the deceiving role, which again is John Beebe called the trickster. You get deceived into relationships. So for Conceptualizer Directors, sometimes when they get in the grip of these less preferred processes, they I guess I want to say seeking love in all the wrong places, but that's probably not exactly right. But it's kind of misreading the connections and going after connections that may not be as fruitful and rewarding as they think. So that's the trickster part, the trickster part. And the demonic role, or the devilish role, kind of plays along with that sometimes in reviewing. So what could be worse is for someone with this leading role of introverted intuiting or foreseeing, a Conceptualizer Director, and to have coming up in this devilish position to say, well, we can't do that because this isn't going to work. It didn't work before. So the devilish role is, I think that's the one that, sort of, you feel like you've done it and it feels right, and you get kind of, the devil made me do it, getting caught up in it. So that's the devil's role for the Conceptualizer Director INTJ. That's our overview of the various lenses that help us understand Conceptualizer Director patterns, or otherwise known as those with INTJ preferences. I hope this has been helpful. I have a feeling it was briefer than the other ones I've done, but that sort of even fits with the pattern itself. Seems to like kind of nail things on the head and get it kind of narrowed down and going forward. So anyway, thank you for watching, and please feel free to leave your comments, and we'll engage, and we'll see you for the next site.